My mom said, "You don't have a stable job anyway. Just watch the kids for your brother." Then she left 3 little kids right on my doorstep. But at that exact moment, I was on a cruise ship sailing through warm Mexican waters and my phone started blowing up with her screaming, "Get back here and fix this right now." My name is Avery Morgan. I'm 30 years old. I'm a freelance graphic designer and content creator. I run my own business, own my apartment, and I'm doing pretty damn well for myself. But in my family's eyes, because I work from home and don't have a husband or kids, I'm the one with nothing going on. The one who's always available. The default. The salt air was thick and the sun was hitting the deck at that perfect golden hour angle when the first chime hit my pocket. Then another. And another. I pulled my phone out, expecting a social media notification or a casual "wish you were here" reply to my story. Instead, my screen was a wall of red dot alerts from my smart home app. Motion detected at front door. I opened the live feed. The lag from the ship's Wi-Fi made the footage stutter, but the image was unmistakable. My mother's silver SUV was idling at the curb, exhaust puffing into the chilly morning air back home. She didn't even put the car in park. I watched her arm reach out of the driver's side window, pointing aggressively at my front door, before she sped off without a backward glance. Left on the concrete were 3 small figures. Logan, the oldest, was holding a crumpled paper bag and a heavy-looking duffel. Emma was clutching her sleeves, looking at the silent house. And little Chloe was sitting directly on the welcome mat, her thumb in her mouth. A shadow crossed the camera. It was Mrs. Henderson from next door, clutching her bathrobe closed. Her voice came through the tiny speaker, tinny and distorted. "Children? Is your Aunt Avery expecting you? I saw her leave for the airport with a suitcase 2 days ago." My heart didn't race, it thudded, a heavy, rhythmic pulse that made my vision swim. My chest felt tight, constricted by a phantom weight that made it impossible to take a full breath. My hands, usually so steady for fine-line digital work, began to shake, a fine, uncontrollable tremor. I checked my messages. A text from my mother sent an hour prior, "Dropping the kids off now. Tyler and Sarah's flight leaves at noon. Don't be difficult. They have snacks. See you in a week." I had told her. I had sent the itinerary. I had mentioned the cruise at Sunday dinner 3 weeks in a row. She hadn't forgotten. She had simply decided that my plans didn't exist because they didn't involve a real office or a husband. She hadn't left them with me. She had abandoned them at a location she hoped I was hiding in. The realization wasn't a shock. It was a cold, clinical confirmation. This wasn't a mistake. It was a calculated move to force me back into my place. I sat down on a teak bench near the railing, the vibration of the ship's engines humming beneath my feet. I needed to breathe, but the air felt thin. On the screen, I watched Mrs. Henderson lead the kids toward her porch. She was looking at my front door with a frown, her hand on her hip. She knew I wasn't there. My mother knew I wasn't there. But to them, my physical presence was an optional detail. This was the Avery tax. It's a fee I've been paying since I started my own firm 5 years ago. I thought about last April. I was in the final push for a $20,000 rebranding contract. I hadn't slept in 48 hours. My mom called at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. "Tyler's car is in the shop," she said, not asking, just stating. "You need to pick him up from work, take him to the dealership, and then drive him home. Oh, and Sarah needs help moving some patio furniture." "Mom, I'm in the middle of a live launch," I had whispered, my eyes bloodshot from the glow of the monitors. "I can't leave my desk." "Avery, stop," she'd sighed, that familiar tone of disappointed patience creeping in. "You're sitting in your pajamas drawing pictures. Tyler has a department to run. He's a manager. His time is actually accounted for. Just save your work and go. You can play on the computer tonight." I had gone. I had picked him up. I had moved the furniture. I lost the contract because I missed the final revision window. When I told them, Tyler just shrugged and said, "Maybe get a job with the HR department next time, then you'd have a leg to stand on." To my family, my success is an illusion because it looks too much like leisure. They see the lack of a commute as a lack of commitment. They see my single status not as independence, but as a vacancy waiting to be filled by their needs. I am the extra person. The one without a real life to interrupt. I looked back at the ring feed. The kids were now sitting on Mrs. Henderson's porch steps. My phone buzzed again. It was a group chat titled Mexico 2025. It was Tyler, his wife Sarah, and my mother. Tyler, Avery, turn the alarm off. The kids said the house is locked. Don't be a brat, we're at the gate. Sarah, I left a list of Chloe's allergies on the counter. Make sure she takes her vitamins. They weren't asking if I was home. They weren't even acknowledging the possibility that I wasn't. They had simply decided that my time, my home, and my life were communal property. I watched the kids on the screen, Logan looking at his feet, Emma shivering. They were pawns in a game of chicken my mother was playing with my boundaries. She figured if she left them there, I would have no choice but to manifest on that porch. It was a cold, calculated bet on my guilt. The pattern wasn't just about babysitting. It was about erasure. If they acknowledged my career was real, they'd have to acknowledge that my time was valuable. And if my time was valuable, they couldn't use it for free. I closed the app. My shaking had stopped, replaced by a strange, icy stillness. I looked at the Mexico 2025 group chat. I looked at the $1,200 drink package receipt in my email. The pattern ends today. I didn't text back. I hit the dial button for my mother. She picked up on the second ring, her voice already sharp, preemptively defensive. Avery, finally. Did you turn the alarm off? Mrs. Henderson is hovering like a vulture and the kids are getting cold. Just let them in and give them some mac and cheese. I stood by the railing, watching a white-capped wave break against the hull. Mom, I'm not at the house. I told you this. I'm on a ship. I'm in international waters. There was a pause, a brief flicker of silence, and then she scoffed. Oh, stop with the drama, Avery. I saw your car in the driveway. If you went somewhere, you would have taken your car. You're probably just in the backyard or at that coffee shop down the street. Just go home. I took an Uber to the airport, Mom. I'm literally looking at the Mexican coastline right now. You need to go back and pick up Tyler's kids. I am not driving 2 hours back because you want to have a tantrum, she snapped. Her tone shifted then, dropping into that low, manipulative register she used when she wanted to remind me of my place. Family helps family, Avery. Your brother and Sarah haven't had a vacation in 4 years. They work hard. They have real responsibilities. You have the flexibility to do this. It's just a week. Think of the children. Are you really going to let your niece and nephew sit on a porch because you're being selfish about your me time? It isn't me time. It's a paid vacation I've been planning for a year, I said, my voice as flat as the horizon. I am not there. I am not coming back. Pick them up. You always do this, she sighed, the sound of a martyr. You make everything so difficult. Just go inside, open the door, and call me when they're settled. I'm hanging up now, I'm at the grocery store. Mom. I don't want to hear it. Be a grown-up for once. The line went dead. She didn't believe me because she didn't want to believe me. To her, my life was a series of suggestions, and hers were the only commands that mattered. She hadn't even asked if I had food in the fridge. She just hung up, confident that my guilt would eventually unlock that door. 10 minutes later, my phone began to vibrate non-stop. The Mexico 2025 group chat was exploding, but it wasn't just my mom and Tyler anymore. My aunt and my cousin had been added. Tyler, Avery is literally locking the kids out of the house because she's busy. My kids are crying on a porch in the rain. I can't believe how heartless she is. Sarah, she told us she'd be there. We checked with her weeks ago. Now she's claiming she's in Mexico. We all know she can't afford a cruise right now. She's just hiding in her bedroom because she doesn't want to help. Mom, I'm so disappointed. I raised her better than this. She's always been jealous of Tyler's family. Now she's taking it out on innocent children. Mrs. Henderson says she's calling the police if someone doesn't come get them. I read the messages twice. The lie was so effortless. She told us she'd be there. We checked with her. They were rewriting reality in real time to make me the villain of a story I wasn't even present for. They weren't worried about the kids. If they were, they'd be turning their cars around. They were worried about their vacation. I looked at the photos I had taken of my boarding pass and my balcony view. I could post them. I could defend myself. But I realized that wouldn't matter. To them, the truth was whatever made me available to serve them. If I was in Mexico, I was a liar who ran away. If I was at home, I was a monster who wouldn't open the door. Either way, in their narrative, I was the one at fault. I watched a text from Tyler pop up. If the cops get involved, Avery, that's on you. You're ruining our lives over a power trip. The weight in my chest was still there, but it was changing. It wasn't anxiety anymore. It was a cold, hard knot of resolve. They wanted a villain. I was about to give them a professional. The silence of my phone was a luxury I hadn't realized I could afford. But I couldn't just let the kids sit there. I stepped into the ship's quiet lounge, found a stable Wi-Fi signal, and made one call, not to my family, but to Mrs. Henderson. Avery. Her voice was hushed, frantic. The police are here. Your brother called them, claiming you were incapacitated inside the house and the children were abandoned on the doorstep. He told them you were having some kind of breakdown. I felt a cold shiver that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. He wasn't just lying about my schedule anymore. He was weaponizing the law to break into my home. Mrs. Henderson, I said, my voice steady, professional, I am recording this call. I am currently on a cruise ship. I have been for 2 days. My family was informed of this multiple times. I did not agree to watch those children. They were left there as an act of custodial abandonment by my mother. There was a long pause on the other end. I heard the muffled sound of a siren in the background of her neighborhood. Oh, Avery, honey. I suspected as much. I told the officer I saw you leave with your suitcases on Tuesday. He's looking at the Ring camera footage now. Please, put him on, I said. A moment later, a deep, gravelly voice replaced hers. This is Officer Miller. Your brother is claiming you're inside and unresponsive. Officer, I am in Mexican waters. I can email you my boarding pass and my location data immediately. I have documented no responses to my brother's requests for childcare. My mother dropped those children on a porch she knew was empty. That isn't a medical emergency on my part, it's a child welfare issue on theirs. I see, the officer said. His tone shifted from urgent to weary. He had seen this kind of family drama before, but rarely with this much paper trail. If you aren't there, and the parents are at the airport, we have a situation here. These children are currently unsupervised. Then you need to do what's necessary for their safety, I said. It was the hardest sentence I'd ever uttered. Contact Child Protective Services or find a legal guardian who is actually in the state. I am not that person. I cannot be that person from 3,000 miles away. I hung up. My heart was thundering, but my mind was a sharp, clear blade. A friend from the industry, Sarah, a fellow freelancer who understood the Avery tax all too well, was sitting across from me in the lounge. She had overheard the tail end of the call. They're going to hate you for this, she said softly. They already hate me, I replied, looking out at the dark ocean. They just hate that they can't use me anymore. There's a difference. I wasn't just defending my vacation. I was defending the perimeter of my life. For the first time in 30 years, I wasn't the default solution. I was a person with a closed door, and for once, the law was the one standing in front of it, not me. I didn't call Tyler. I didn't call my mother. I didn't send a long, rambling paragraph to the group chat explaining my why. Explanations are a courtesy for people who respect you, and my family had long since forfeited that privilege. Instead, I opened my laptop and began to treat this like a logistical crisis for a client, with cold, detached efficiency. I sent the email I had promised to Officer Miller. I attached a PDF of my cruise itinerary, a screenshot of my boarding pass, and a screen recording of the text thread with Tyler from 2 weeks ago where I had explicitly said, I am not available to watch the kids from the 12th to the 19th. I will be out of the country. Then, I did something I should have done years ago. I changed the access codes to my smart home. With a few taps, the family code was deactivated. The guest Wi-Fi was cut. The garage door opener was disabled. My brother had threatened to call a locksmith, but with a police officer on the scene who now had proof of my location and the fact that I was the sole owner of the property, any attempt to force entry would be treated as a break-in, not a welfare check. I watched the live feed one last time. Officer Miller was standing on the sidewalk, his arms crossed. He was talking into his radio. My mother's car was nowhere to be seen. She had likely gone home to her quiet house, convinced she had won by leaving the kids as a burden I'd eventually have to pick up. You're very calm, my friend Sarah remarked, watching me close the laptop lid. "I'm not calm," I said, and I realized it was true. "I'm finished." There's a difference. When you're calm, you're waiting for the storm to pass. When you're finished, the storm doesn't matter anymore. I walked over to the ship's guest services desk. I requested a printout of my bill so far. Every drink, every excursion, every dollar spent on the peace and quiet they were trying to steal. I tucked it into my bag. It wasn't a receipt. It was a manifesto. I went back to my cabin and changed into a dress for dinner. I spent 20 minutes on my hair. I didn't check the group chat. I knew what was happening back at the airport. I knew Tyler and his wife were likely being paged over the intercom. I knew their emergency contact calls were starting to flood in from the police department. They were expecting me to be the one who scrambled. They were expecting me to be the one crying, calling airlines, trying to find a flight home to fix the mess they made. They thought my love for my niece and nephews was a leash they could pull. But they forgot one thing. You can't pull a leash if the person on the other end has let go. I walked into the dining room, the sounds of a string quartet filling the air. I ordered a glass of expensive Cabernet. Back in my hometown, the police were probably taking the kids to the station to wait for their parents. 1,000 miles away, I picked up my fork and began my meal. They still thought I was part of their plan. They had no idea I had already started my own. The ship's satellite connection was flickering as we hit a patch of rougher water, but the notification from my front porch was crystal clear. It was 4:15 p.m. back home. A cold, grey drizzle had turned into a steady downpour, slicking the driveway. I opened the app and watched the scene unfold in silence. A black sedan screeched to a halt behind the police cruiser that was still parked at my curb. Tyler and Sarah burst out of the car. They weren't supposed to be there. They were supposed to be on a flight to Cabo. They were disheveled, frantic, and, even through the tiny speaker, I could hear them screaming. "Where is she?" Tyler was yelling at Officer Miller, pointing a trembling finger at my darkened front windows. "Where is my sister? She's inside. She's ignoring the door. My kids have been out here for hours." Sarah was clutching Chloe, who was shivering in a damp t-shirt. Emma and Logan were huddled by the police car, looking terrified. It was heart-wrenching to see them like that, but I remained still. I had to. If I reached out now, if I offered a single cent of comfort, the cycle would reset. Officer Miller didn't move. He stood like a stone wall between my brother and my front door. "Mr. Morgan, settle down. We've already established through GPS and maritime logs that your sister is not in the country. She hasn't been for 48 hours. "That's a lie," Sarah shrieked, her voice cracking. "She's playing a game. She's always been like this, trying to ruin things for us because she's lonely." Miller's voice was dangerously low. "The only people who ruined this were the ones who left 3 minors on a locked porch without a confirmed guardian. Your mother is currently being questioned at the precinct about custodial abandonment. You can join her there, or you can keep yelling at me while your children catch pneumonia in the rain." I watched Tyler try his code on the door. He punched the buttons with enough force to break the plastic. Red light. Access denied. He tried again. Red light. He kicked the base of the door, a muffled thud echoing through my phone's speakers. "She changed the codes," Tyler whispered, the realization finally hitting his face. It was the look of a man who had reached for a safety net and found only air. I sat on my bed in the cabin, the room gently swaying. I could have pressed the talk button. I could have told them where the spare key was hidden in the garage. I could have ended their panic. But as I watched them scramble to get the kids back into the car, not because they were worried about my well-being, but because their own vacation was officially dead, I realized they didn't need my help. They needed a mirror. They piled into the car, tires spinning on the wet asphalt as they sped away toward the police station. The street went quiet again. The rain continued to fall on my empty porch. The authority had spoken, the reality had set in, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one cleaning up the glass. By the next morning, the cruise ship had docked at Cabo San Lucas. My phone, finally catching a stable signal, was no longer a communication device. It was a forensic log of a total family meltdown. The Mexico 2025 group chat had been deleted. In its place was a flurry of missed calls from blocked numbers and a string of increasingly desperate voicemails. The shift in power was audible in the messages. The aggression had curdled into a frantic, panicked pleading. "Avery, please." My mother's voice was strained, the sound of someone who had spent the night in a hard plastic chair at a precinct. Tyler and Sarah's flights were non-refundable. They lost $4,000. And the police, they're talking about a formal report. They're saying I abandoned the kids. You have to tell them you were supposed to be there. Just tell them you got the dates mixed up. If you don't, I could lose my license at the daycare. Then came Tyler, his voice stripped of its usual bravado. Ave, look, I'm sorry I said those things. I was stressed. But CPS is involved now. They're doing a home visit. We need you to come back and vouch for us. We told them you're the primary sitter. If you aren't there to back that up, we don't know what's going to happen. Please, just fly home. I'll pay for the flight. Just get here. I stood on my balcony, watching the small white excursion boats zip across the harbor. I thought about the Avery tax again. Tyler was offering to pay for a flight home, a fraction of the cost of the vacation he'd just lost, but he still wasn't acknowledging the cost of my life. He didn't want me back because he missed me. He wanted me back because I was the only witness who could lie well enough to save them from their own negligence. I didn't reply. I didn't even read the messages. I let the blue checkmarks stay grey. The consequences were cascading now. Without me to play the role of the unreliable sister, they were being forced to face the unreliable parents label. My mother's job, my brother's reputation, Sarah's pristine social standing, it was all leaning on a pillar that had finally decided to walk away. The most telling message came from Sarah at noon. Avery, we're at your house. The neighbor said you have a property manager coming by. Why? Just let us stay in your guest suite until this blows up. We can't go back to our house yet, the police are still calling. They were still trying to use my space. Even in the middle of a legal crisis they created, their first instinct was to treat my home as their bunker. I watched my doorbell camera. They were sitting in their car at the curb, staring at my front door like it was a vault they could no longer crack. I felt a strange, cold lightness. For years, I had carried the weight of their expectations, terrified that if I let go, they would fall. Now, they were falling, and I realized the ground wasn't as far away as I'd feared. They were surviving. They were just uncomfortable. And for the first time, their discomfort wasn't my emergency. I spent the afternoon in Cabo walking through the local markets. I didn't think about the police or the daycare licenses. I thought about the texture of hand-woven linens and the smell of roasting coffee. It wasn't until I sat down for a quiet lunch by the marina that I decided it was time to speak. Not because I owed them an answer, but because the silence needed a period at the end of the sentence. Before the bubbles could even appear, before Tyler could launch into a rage or my mother could start her family helps family routine, I acted. I didn't just mute the thread. I blocked every single one of them. My mother, Tyler, Sarah, and even the extended family members who had joined in on the digital stoning. The effect was instantaneous. It was as if a high-pitched ringing that had been in my ears for a decade suddenly stopped. The air in the marina felt easier to breathe. I waited for the wave of guilt to hit. I waited for that old, familiar voice in the back of my head to tell me I was being difficult, that I was tearing the family apart, or that I was heartless for letting them face the consequences of their own choices. But the guilt didn't come. What came instead was a profound sense of relief, followed by a quiet, simmering anger that I had let it go on this long. I realized then that they weren't drowning, they were just finally having to learn how to swim. They had been using me as a life raft for so long that they'd forgotten how to stay afloat on their own. By pulling myself away, I wasn't hurting them. I was finally letting them be the responsible adults they always claimed to be. I put my phone face down on the table. I watched a pelican dive into the water and emerge with a fish. Nature has a way of being brutal and honest all at once. I finished my meal, paid the check, and walked back toward the ship. I had 3 more days of sun, sea, and total, beautiful autonomy. The Avery tax had been repealed, and for the first time in my life, I was keeping everything I earned. 3 months later, the dust has settled into a new, quieter reality. The Mexico 2025 group chat is a ghost, and so is the version of me that used to jump at every notification. Returning home from the cruise was surreal. There were scuff marks on my front door from Tyler's boots and a stack of formal letters from the precinct on my counter. I didn't call a family meeting. I didn't go over to my mother's house to talk it out. I hired a contractor to refinish the door and sent the invoice to Tyler's work email with a copy to his supervisor. He paid it within 24 hours. No message attached. No sorry. Just a digital confirmation of a debt settled. The social fallout was exactly as slow and clinical as I expected. My mother didn't lose her daycare license, but she was placed on a 1-year probationary period after the police report was finalized. She tells the rest of the family that I betrayed her, but I've noticed a shift. My aunts don't call me to ask for tech support anymore. My cousins don't ask to borrow my guest room. They're afraid of the new Avery, the one who keeps records and doesn't answer the door. Tyler and Sarah had to attend a series of mandatory parenting classes as part of their agreement with CPS. From what I hear through the grapevine, it was the most humiliating experience of their lives. They blame me for their inconvenience, but for the first time, their blame has no teeth. It's just noise in a room I no longer stand in. I still see the kids occasionally at larger family functions, like my nephew's birthday last month. I brought a gift, stayed for exactly 1 hour, and spoke to no one about anything deeper than the weather. My mother tried to corner me near the cake, her eyes watering, starting in on how family is all we have. I just looked at her, smiled softly, and said, "Then you should have taken better care of yours." The room went silent. The old Avery would have panicked at the tension, would have made a joke to soften the blow. The new Avery just took a sip of water and walked to her car. My business is thriving. Without the constant interruptions and their emergency errands, my productivity has soared. I've signed 2 more long-term contracts, and I'm currently looking at a larger studio space downtown. I realized that the Avery tax wasn't just costing me time, it was costing me my potential. I still have the Ring camera footage of that rainy afternoon saved in a secure folder. I don't watch it to feel angry. I watch it whenever I feel that old tug of guilt, that default urge to say yes when I should say no. It's a reminder that my boundaries aren't a weapon, they're a shield. And I'm finally the one holding it. I'm sitting in my home office today. The sun is streaming through the new windows, hitting the dual monitors and the clean, organized surface of my desk. It's a Tuesday morning, 10:30 a.m. In the old world, this was the hour the emergency calls would start. The requests for rides, the quick favors that took 4 hours, the assumptions that because I was here, I was theirs. Now, the only sound is the low hum of my computer and the occasional songbird outside. My phone is on the corner of the desk. It stays silent. I think back to that moment on the ship, looking at the Mexican coastline and feeling that terrifying vertigo. I thought I was losing my family. I thought I was breaking something that couldn't be fixed. But looking back, I realize I wasn't breaking a family, I was breaking a fever. I am no longer the default. I am no longer the person who exists in the margins of other people's lives to make their stories run smoother. I've reclaimed my name. I'm not just Tyler's sister or the one without kids. I'm Avery Morgan, a woman who built a life that she actually gets to live. The most profound change isn't in how they treat me, it's in how I see myself. I used to think that being available was a form of love. I thought that by saying yes to every demand, I was proving my value. I was wrong. True value isn't found in how much of yourself you can give away for free, it's found in what you choose to protect. I don't hold on to a desire for revenge. Revenge is just another way of being tethered to them, another way of letting their actions dictate my emotional state. Justice wasn't seeing them humiliated at the police station or watching their vacation crumble. Justice was the moment I realized I didn't have to apologize for being 3,000 miles away from a problem I didn't create. My family still sees me as the villain of that week. They tell a story where I abandoned them. And I've learned to be okay with that. Let them keep their story, I'll keep my peace. Sometimes, being the black sheep just means you're the only one who refused to be sheared. I look at the clock. It's time for a break. I'm going to go for a walk, grab a coffee, and enjoy the silence of a life that belongs entirely to me. I don't have to check in. I don't have to ask permission. I don't have to wonder if the porch is full of someone else's responsibilities. The door is locked. The codes are mine. And for the first time in 30 years, I'm finally home.